Heart of a Champion, Chapter 11. All through autumn, I'd go to the backyard every afternoon and pound the ball against the wall to keep my fielding sharp. On weekends, Jimmy would pitch to me, as hard as he could for as long as he could. Sometimes he'd pitch for so long I'd feel guilty. "Your turn," I'd say. But if he had any life in his arm, he'd keep going. "You need the practice more than I do, you bum." He could call me that, and I didn't care, because I was getting better. Sometimes Jimmy even had to jump out of the way of a line drive I'd sent right back up the middle. The day after Christmas, Jimmy told me his father had come by on Christmas Day. He says he's going to sign up for counseling. That's what my mother has always wanted. "Great," I said. "Maybe your parents will, He finished the sentence for me. "Get back together?" He pulled some grass out of the ground. "If he does it, sure." "He said he would, didn't he?" "Yeah," Jimmy answered, his voice tight. I poked him in the ribs. "Come on, Jimmy, be happy." He looked at me and managed a smile. Chapter 12. This next thing that happened is a little weird, and I'm ashamed of it. It should never have happened. All I can say is that both Jimmy and I were 13 years old, and that John Tustin was a lot older. We were at Henry Ford playing 3 flies up on a Sunday after in late January. Jimmy had caught his 3rd fly ball and was running in to take the bat when Tustin showed up. Tustin lived on my block. I knew who he was, but since he was 16 or 17 years old, I'd never hung out with him. Actually, I'd always been afraid of him, though he'd never done anything to me. There was just something about him. That day, he wanted to play ball with us. It seemed like an okay idea. One more guy would make the game better. Besides, when you're in 7th grade, it's hard to get rid of a high school kid. If we told him he couldn't play, he might have taken our stuff or pushed us around. Jimmy was up, but since Tustin was older, Jimmy held out the bat. "As soon as one of us catches 3, then we get to hit," he told Tustin. Tustin yanked the bat from Jimmy. "I know how to play." Right away, we knew we'd made a mistake. Tustin tossed the ball too high, and he didn't keep an eye on it. He missed half the time, and the balls he hit were grounders. After Tustin had swung 24 times, neither Jimmy nor I had a catch, and it didn't look like we'd ever get one. "Why don't we play 1 fly up?" Jimmy called to him. Tustin glared out. "I can hit the ball," he screamed. He took a ferocious swing and missed. It would have been funny, except we were both scared. Tustin tossed the ball and swung again. This time he did connect solidly, only he pulled the ball out of the park and into the backyard of one of the houses behind Henry Ford. We peered over the fence for a few seconds. "I guess it's lost," Jimmy said. "I've got to go home anyway." "Me too," I chimed in. "Don't be in such a hurry," Tustin said. "I want to show you guys something." "Some other time," Jimmy said. "My mom wants me home." Tustin stared him down. "What do you mean? I've watched you guys lots of times. You play here for hours." He grinned. "You'll like what I've got to show you." I looked at Jimmy and he looked at me. We didn't really have anywhere to go or anything to do. Besides, we didn't have a clue as to how to get rid of Tustin. We hid our gear behind the backstop and followed him up Goodwin Avenue to Stulstaff Park. There are no baseball fields or anything up there. It's more like a forest with hiking trails and cliffs and a little creek. Tustin led us up one of the trails. About every 50 yards, either Jimmy or I would ask him where we were going. "Just shut up," he finally hissed. About half-mile up the trail, he pulled back some bushes and pointed. "Through there." Jimmy and I ducked in. Tustin followed. When he let the bushes go, they snapped into place. We were in a small clearing. On the far side was a shack made of old planks of wood. Inside were some old rusty wire chairs and mattresses, and Tustin smiled. "I bring all my girlfriends here." Only once had I seen Tustin with a girl. Jimmy and I sat in the old chairs. Tustin lay down on the mattress. "You want a cigarette?" Jimmy shook his head. Tustin held out the package towards me. "How about you, Seth?" Right here is where I don't understand myself. I'd never smoked, never wanted to smoke. What did I care about Tustin? Jimmy had turned him down cold. I should have done the same. I should have stuck with my friend, but I didn't. I took the cigarette. Tustin reached behind him, opened up an old box, and pulled out a 6-pack of Budweisers. He twisted the top off one and handed the bottle to me. "Thanks," I said. He tried to hand one to Jimmy, but Jimmy wouldn't take it. "Suit yourself," Tustin said. "It just means more for Seth and me." He raised his bottle to his mouth and chugged about half of it. He wiped his mouth, grinned. "This sure beats the hell out of playing baseball." I sipped my beer. It tasted bitter and warm. "So is this what you wanted to show us?" Jimmy said challengingly. "Some old shack?" Tustin scowled. He chugged the rest of his beer and then reached into the box again. This time he pulled out some magazines and tossed them toward us. "Feast your eyes." I was in 7th grade, so it's not like I wasn't interested in sex, but Tustin's magazines were totally sick. They creeped me out. I could tell Jimmy felt the same. "Pretty hot, aren't they?" Tustin said, reaching around for another beer. Neither Jimmy nor I answered. "You know what I do sometimes?" Tustin went on. "Sometimes I come up here in the afternoon and I take off my clothes so that I'm nice and cool and comfortable, and then I lie back on this mattress and drink a few beers and flip through those magazines." He paused. "You guys feel like doing that?" Jimmy stood up. "Get up, Seth. We're getting out of here." I stood. Jimmy headed across the clearing. As I started to follow, Tustin grabbed hold of my arm. I tried to shake free, but Tustin's grip was strong. "Let him go," Jimmy said. "He doesn't have to go just because you're going," Tustin shot back. "He's going because he wants to go," Jimmy yelled. "Don't you, Seth?" They both were staring at me. I could hardly speak. I wanted to go. I finally stammered. Tustin held me for a second before he shoved me away. "Get out of here, both of you. But don't tell anybody about this place or I'll make you pay." We staggered across the clearing, scrambled through the bushes, stumbled onto the path. Then we both ran as fast as we could until we were back at Henry Ford. I half expected our gear to have been stolen, but it was still there. My baseball glove, my bat, my ball. None of them ever looked better. We didn't play catch or hit ground balls. We just sat behind the backstop. Jimmy squeezed the handle of his bat and took some half swings. I did the same. The wind was blowing through the high branches of the trees. "Let's make a pact," Jimmy finally said. "You and me, no cigarettes, no drinking, no drugs, no girls, just baseball. Okay?" "Okay," I said. It sounds corny, but we sort of touched bats then to seal the agreement. Whenever I think about that day, one thing always bothers me. What would have happened if Jimmy hadn't been there? I'd like to think I would have left, that I was just about ready to get up and that Jimmy just beat me to it. But maybe that's a lie. Maybe I wouldn't have had the courage to leave. I hadn't wanted the cigarette, but I'd smoked it. I hadn't wanted the beer, but I drunk it. Maybe Jimmy saved me. Maybe without him, I would have done anything Tustin wanted me to do.